What's up, everybody? I'm back with another 5-minute sermon, and today we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 12. And I haven't actually run through this yet, so I don't know how long it's going to be. It might be 3 minutes, it might be 6 minutes, but we'll call it the 5-minute sermon, and we'll be in Hebrews chapter 12, and we want to talk about the race that is set before us. So I was reading this morning, and the writer of Hebrews, some believe to be Paul, some believe to be his associate Apollos, or maybe even somebody else. But the writer of Hebrews just got done in Hebrews chapter 11 talking about the Faith Hall of Fame. And he talked about all these guys from Enoch and Abel to Noah to Abraham and on and on. And talked about the great things that these guys did for God. And here in chapter 12, we're going to start, we're just going to read verse 1 and 2. And he says, Hebrews 12, verse 1, he says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are surrounded with so great a cloud of witnesses," he says, "let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God." So he starts off by, alluding to everything he talked about in Hebrews 11. He says that we're surrounded with such a great cloud of witnesses, these people who witnessed, for God and witnessed of the greatness and the goodness of God. And this is what he tells us to do. He tells us that we are to lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. He tells us to lay aside every. So he doesn't just tell us to lay aside the sin. We all know that we all know what the sin. Don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery, don't commit those sins. But he also tells us to lay aside every weight. So there are things in our lives that aren't necessarily sin, but they may be distractions that are weighing us down from fully fulfilling what God has for us. And he tells us we are to lay aside not just the sin, but lay aside every weight. So we have to be mature enough to identify what those weights are, what those things are that are distracting us from doing everything and being everything that God has designed for us and called us and sanctified us to do and to be. What are those weights? It could be something as simple as you say watching TV is not a sin. Well, depending on maybe the program you're watching, but it could be that the amount of time you're devoting to TV, to programs, that could be a distraction, that could be a weight, that could be a sin. It could be a number of things. It could be listening to certain types of music. It could be anything that's distracting us from the things of God. And so he says not only to lay aside the sin, but to lay aside the weight. And he says that these are the things that so easily beset it. He says they easily. It's not like a hard thing. He says that they easily beset. They easily distract us. They easily draw us off course. So he says we have to lay them aside. And what I imagine is we're taking those things and we're putting them to the side. So now there's this path, there's this race. He tells us to run with patience the race that is set before us. There's this race, and what we're doing is we're setting those things aside, out of the path, out of the direction that we're heading. And I love what he tells us here. He doesn't just tell us to run the race that is set before us. He tells us to run with patience the race that is set before us. So now, and I find that very interesting. And first of all, he calls it a race. And we have to understand, though, that we're not racing against one another. Ephesians tells us we're to be measured unto the stature of Christ. We're not measured against one another. I'm not running my race against you. You're not running your race against me. But, really, in essence, we're running together, for the kingdom. But he tells us to do it with patience. And just a couple chapters before that, in Hebrews 6, he tells us that we're to follow those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. So there's a patience that comes with running the race, and I don't know, what exactly that entails. Being patient, we I kind of, you get the image of like the rabbit, and the turtle, and they was it the rabbit and the turtle? They were running anyway. They were running their race, and the one guy set out all fast, and then the other guy was kind of patient, and he paced himself, and then the guy got burned out. I don't know what that story is. You probably know what that story is, but and then the guy got burned out. It's a good analogy. I'm not sure that's exactly what he's getting at. I don't know that we're supposed to pace ourselves for the kingdom so we don't get burned out later. I do believe that there are moments when we're going after something God called us to do. And then there's seasons of rest where we sort of plateau, kind of rest, regenerate, recuperate, and then we go on to something else. But I don't know that he's necessarily saying that we need to pace ourselves, but he does say we need to be patient. And I think it probably has more to do with understanding that we're not going after a specific destination, but they what's that famous phrase that the 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 journey is the destination, something along those lines, where we're, in the process of the journey, that's where the fulfillment of everything that God has for us is in that process, not necessarily getting to the end point. And I think that's probably more of what he's getting at, to run the race with patience. But he tells us that we are to look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Not only, see, we have to understand that I'm not the finisher of my faith. I don't finish my faith. Now, I do the things necessary to develop, as far as reading my Bible, being in prayer, uh, but I have to understand that Jesus, he is the finisher. He started it and he's going to finish it, and we have to look unto him and we have to trust him. And it says that he said that there was a joy set before him when he endured that cross. He said that there was joy. He was on the cross, and he saw the joy that was set before him, which was us, which was, us being saved and being set free from everything that the enemy and the darkness tried to hold us to. He says he despised the shame and is now set down at the right hand of the throne of God. And in fact, in Hebrews it says that we're also seated together with him in heavenly places. And so I just want to encourage everybody that let's be mature enough to identify not only the sin, but identify the weights, the things that are trying to distract us and hold us back. And sometimes we just have to lay them aside, put them aside. Like, that's not my thing. I'm not, that's not helping me further my walk with God or further the kingdom. And it's not, again, it's not necessarily a sin. It's okay to like do those things, but we have to understand that there's a moment where they become distracting and they weigh us down. And so, anyway, I hope to encourage somebody today. I think I went way over my 5 minutes, but thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another 5-minute sermon.